live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.
Benny Ricciardi is here to break down the day's betting board for you.
Let's go, Jerry. Go!
Taking a first look at the day's bets, it's time for the FTN Betting Show. Welcome to the FTN Bets Cast for Tuesday, June 21st here at FTN Bets and sponsored by our good friends over at Sleeper. Sleeper is the fastest growing fantasy platform today with millions of players, and now you could win on Sleeper by playing in their new over-under game. It's super easy to play. So first, in any sport, you're going to choose two or more players that you like and pick whether they're going to go over or under their listed total. So for example, in baseball, it could be something like the number of hits, maybe the number of strikeouts that a pitcher had, the number of runs somebody's going to score. And then you're going to choose an amount of money that you want to enter into the contest. If you pick correctly, you can win anywhere from 2 times your money all the way up to 20 times your money if you go 5 out of 5 and get them all correct. But the main reason I'm excited about this over-under game on Sleeper is that it's the only app where I could join my buddy's contest and we could all play together. It has a built-in group chat where I can see what you're playing, you can see what I'm playing, and we could all follow along with the guy who's won 3 or 4 days in a row in our group and play what he's playing. And it's insanely fun when everybody is riding it out together. So stop what you're doing and download Sleeper now to play in their new over-under game. Have some fun with your friends and make a little money in the process. On your mobile phone, you can join our listener group on Sleeper at sleeper.com/FTN bets, and Sleeper will automatically match your first deposit up to $100. Again, you're going to go to sleeper.com/FTN bets and get a $100 match on your first deposit. There are terms and conditions that apply, so see Sleeper's terms of use for those details. Yesterday, we started our team previews here on the FTN Betscast by looking at the Buffalo Bills. And today we're going to stay in the AFC East and look at one of their biggest challengers to win the AFC East this year, which is going to be the New England Patriots. Patriots finished second in the division last year at 10-7. They were one game ahead of the Miami Dolphins, who were 9-8. This year, the Patriots are actually projected for a few less wins than they were last season, although this is a team that does always tend to outperform expectations due to good coaching. And there's really nothing else that you could say here. You look at this roster, it's really crazy when you actually look at this roster and figure, how the heck did this team wind up winning 10 games last year? Because there really isn't a lot of standout offensive talent on this team. They do still have a good defense. They do still have a lot of very good players on that defense. But when you look at their offense, there really isn't much there. It's not a particularly scary receiver group. They don't have a, stud quarterback like they did in the Tom Brady days. Even their running backs are, somewhat pedestrian overall. And yet at the end of the day, this is a football team that doesn't make mistakes and that wins a lot of football games. The projection for the New England Patriots for the 2022 season is 8.5 wins. That's the number that we see out there in the market. If you take a look at Jeff Ratcliffe's win total projections that he put out right after the schedules were released this year, he has them slightly above that at 8.9 wins. And I tend to agree with Jeff here. I do think this is a team that, whether you could see it, whether you could figure out exactly how it's going to happen, you're probably not going to be able to. But this is not a team that I think is going to be really bad. They're just never a bad football team. New England is always one of those teams that is going to stay in games. They're always going to have a good game plan. They're always going to be close. There are games where the other team just has way more talent than they do, and they'll probably lose a few of those games. But you know what? There aren't that many teams in the league that I'm going to sit here and say that are so much more talented than the New England Patriots that they're not going to be able to be in those games. So I actually do like the over on this win total here. You could play the over 8.5 wins at -115. You can get that at PointsBet, at FanDuel, or at DraftKings. The under 8.5 wins, you can get that at +110 right now at Sugar House, Bet Rivers, or Unibet. So even just looking at the payouts here that are being offered in the market, it does look like the lean is going to be to the over here with that -115. You got to give up a little bit of juice on that. Whereas the under on that 8.5 is paying +110, meaning that it's less likely to happen. So it's more likely that they're going to end up over that 8.5 win number. So I do like that over 8.5 wins on PointsBet, FanDuel, or DraftKings for the New England Patriots. The Patriots last year, they were 6th in the league in scoring at 27.2 points per game. That's really good. especially for an offense that you're looking around and you're like, I can't even pick out who the great players on this offense are right now. And again, you're not the only one. Most people probably can't name the two running backs that are going to be the two-headed running back for the New England Patriots this year. And honestly, the Patriots might not even be able to name that because they're going to have 3 or 4 guys that they roll in there, including James White on top of guys like Stevenson and Harris. And, we don't even know. There could be another running back that emerges from the group that they have in there as well, who we're not even thinking of right now. They were also second in fewest points allowed at only 17.8 points per game. So again, take the names out of it, take all of that stuff out of the equation, and just look at, they have a team that is basically returning almost all the guys that they had last year. They did make a couple additions, a couple others, maybe not additions, but, guys that can approximate the production that they got from some of the guys that they may have lost last year, if not give them better production this year. And this is a team that did finish 6th in scoring and 2nd in points allowed. If you're scoring the 6th most points and you're giving up the 2nd fewest points in the league, listen, guys, you're going to win a lot of football games that way. I mean, if you're top 10 in scoring and bottom 10 or top 6 in scoring and bottom 3 in, points allowed, that's going to translate into a lot of wins. And that's the thing that I don't think people are giving enough credit to this New England team for. It's not a team filled with superstars that are carrying them. It's a team filled with a lot of guys who just put on their hat and grab their lunch pail and go out there and just win football games. So definitely something we got to respect here. I do like this over on the 8.5 wins. There's a couple other interesting numbers I want to mention here with the New England Patriots. One of them is, will New England make the playoffs? Yes is plus 160. No is minus 165. Now, again, this was a playoff team last year. They were a 10-win team there last year. They're projected a little bit under that right now. And I think they're going to I don't think they're going to be able to beat Buffalo, right? So they're not going to win a division, which means they're going to have to get a wild card, which is fine. That's fine that they're going to be able fighting for one of those spots. You probably need to hit double-digit wins, especially with it going up to 17 games this year or last year. You probably need to hit double-digit wins in order to make the playoffs. That's what you needed last year. I'm assuming that's probably what you're going to need this year. So I get why they're a little bit below there, but I don't think that plus 160 on will they make the playoffs is a really bad number. You always have Bill Belichick out there. He's a guy who is always going to put them in a good game plan. If it comes down to the end of the season and they have to win a game and they're like one game out of the playoffs or something like that, I don't think there's another coach in the league that I would feel more comfortable with in that kind of situation than I would with Belichick. I mean, it's just the way it is right now. The guy is one of the best at what he does. He always has a good game plan. He always has his team in there. So plus 160 on DraftKings, the best place you can get that for the New England Patriots to make the playoffs. BetMGM has the best price on will they make the playoffs if you want to bet against them with a no. And the best price there is minus 165. This is as high as minus 200 on some of the other sites. So again, if you're a Patriots hater, and I know there are a lot of you out there that are Patriot haters, this is one of those ones that you could look at. BetMGM, no, will the Patriots make the playoffs? Minus 165. But like I said, I think the better value is taken. Yes, they will make the playoffs at plus 160 over on DraftKings. I think that's a good number over there. So let's talk about some of the other numbers here with the New England Patriots. Again, we talked yesterday about how the Buffalo Bills are a massive favorite to win the AFC East. They project at least 2 wins ahead of all the other teams in the division here. So it's understandable that all these other teams, the Patriots, the Dolphins, the Jets, are all going to be pretty big numbers just to win the AFC East. And the Patriots, you can get them as high as plus 500 on DraftKings is the best number to play them at there. So if you like the Patriots to win the AFC East, plus 500 is the number there. It's plus 450 on Sugar House, Bet Rivers, PointsBet, and Unibet, plus 430 down on Caesars, and plus 400 on MGM and FanDuel. So playing it on DraftKings at plus 500, you are getting 100 basis points better than you're getting on books like FanDuel and BetMGM, which has the low number for them to win the AFC East. For the Patriots to win the entire AFC, you can get that at 25-1 plus 2,500. Again, on DraftKings is the best place to play that number there. DraftKings is a little lower on the Patriots than a lot of the other books out there. They're giving a little bit of a better payout in basically every market on the New England Patriots here. DraftKings is where you can get the over on wins at the best price, is where you can get the AFC East at the best price, and it's where you can get them to win the AFC plus 2,500. It's also the best place to get Super Bowl, which we'll talk about in a minute. But as for the AFC, plus 2,200 on FanDuel, plus 2,000 on PointsBet, Sugar House, Bet Rivers, Unibet, plus 1,800 is the low over at BetMGM. So if you think the New England Patriots could be the AFC champions this year, again, they did make the playoffs last year. Team that was sixth in scoring, second in points allowed. Those are very, very good numbers that I think people are kind of sleeping on here a little bit. Yes, they did have some bad teams in their division. The division is a little bit better this year. Miami has gotten a lot better. The addition of Tyreek Hill, and the Jets have gotten a lot better with a lot of the new players that they brought in as well. But I still think New England is better than those two teams. The only team in this division I think is better is going to be the Buffalo Bills. To win the AFC, it's a stretch, but like I said, you're getting 25-1 plus 2,500 on the New England Patriots there. Super Bowl number for the New England Patriots plus 5,000. So 50-1 is the number you're getting on the Patriots to win the Super Bowl. I don't think that's very good value. That gives them a 2% chance to win the Super Bowl this year. I think it's probably lower than that. But it is the best number out there on DraftKings. You can't even find it anywhere above plus 4,000 on any of the other sites. FanDuel, Caesars, PointsBet, SugarHouse, BetRivers, Unibet, all at 40-1 plus 4,000 there. BetMGM plus 3,500, 35-1 for them. 50-1 though is the best number for the New England Patriots to win the Super Bowl. And again, you can get that number over on DraftKings. Would I bet on the Super Bowl, the AFC, or the AFC East with the Patriots? No, probably not. In order for them to win, they would need a lot of help. Miami would have to hold off Miami. They'll probably be able to hold off the Jets. And I'm a Jets fan, and I'm saying this, but the Jets, I think people are a little bit too high on the Jets this year. I hope I'm wrong. Again, as a Jets fan, I've been a long-suffering Jets fan for 40-something years. I hope I'm wrong here, but I don't think I am. The Patriots are definitely a better team than they are. Miami, that's going to be an interesting game to see whether or not they're better there. Miami's got a lot of changes going on. They brought in some new players, so that's going to be a team that everybody's interested in seeing how well they can gel and come together, and how well they can use all the weapons that they seem to have, especially in their passing game right now. But really, you would need an injury to like Josh Allen in order for this to even be, something that you would want to consider. And again, the only one that I would consider if you were going to bet on any of these numbers we talked about, Super Bowl, AFC East, would probably be the plus 500 on DraftKings for them to win the AFC East. And again, what you're really saying is, I think Josh Allen is going to get injured at some point during this year, and there's going to be a big regression on the Buffalo Bills, because that's probably what you would need in order for that to pay off. But it is the one thing that I would be slightly interested in playing over here, as well as, again, if you want to play will the Patriots make the playoffs at plus 160? I don't think that's a horrible bet either. So those are the two things I'm looking at in terms of the team numbers. So the next thing we're going to do is get into some of the player numbers and some of the player totals. And here's the problem I have with the Patriots. When you look at this team, the Patriots are one of those teams where, the sum of the parts is better than any individual part, right? And that's good and bad. It's good because it means they win as a team, and it's tough if you're a defensive coordinator to try to key on any one thing that they do, because there really isn't one guy you have to stop in order to beat this team. They're a very balanced team. They're going to do a lot of things. We don't know what their offense is really going to look like this year, because last year, I think most people understand that, it was Mac Jones' rookie year. They were trying to protect him. They were trying not to give him too much. They did run the ball a lot last year. They were not a team that flung it around all that much. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but remember they had that one game with Buffalo where they played an entire game where I think Mac Jones only attempted 3 passes, completed 2 of them for 19 yards. Things like that I don't think are going to happen this year. Now, again, I'm not saying that he's going to go and sling the ball 40 or 50 times a game. I think all last season there were only 2 games where he threw the ball 40 times or more. So again, I'm not expecting this offense to be, run and gun and throw 50 passes or anything like that this year. I think they're going to be very balanced, maybe even lean a lot more towards the run heavy kind of side, play a lot of ball control, be really smart with it there. That's what we can expect from this New England offense this year. But with that being said, again, do they have a guy who's likely to lead the league in passing? No, it would take a massive leap for Mac Jones and a massive change of the way they played last year for him even to be into that consideration of, most passing yards. Is he going to be an MVP candidate? Probably not. I mean, what would you need? He's not a guy who runs the ball, right? So, I mean, you basically would have to have the kind of seasons that guys like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers have had, and Patrick Mahomes. So, I mean, you would need 5,000 yards and maybe 40 touchdowns out of Mac Jones for him to be an MVP contention. I mean, Mac Jones to win the MVP is 500-1. I mean, again, 50,000 plus 50,000 odd. That's a great number. You want to throw $1 on it and hope you win 500. I mean, I'm not going to stop you. Most likely, though, you're going to be kind of pissing away that dollar. It's not really something that's likely to happen. And then you even look at his weapons, right? Like, again, who's it? Kendrick Bourne, Devontae Parker, who they brought in here. I mean, are those guys that are going to be MVP candidates there? Are those guys that you really want to like have anything on? I mean, Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, these are all the guys that are going to be out there. But when you look in terms of some of the other markets, like Offensive Player of the Year or MVP, do any of these guys even register? Like, to me, none of these guys even register. They would need to have career seasons, and we would need to see a bunch of other guys kind of fall down for any of them to even have a shot to win this. And even then, the Patriots are not a team where they're just going to feed one guy the ball. We're not going to get a 150 catch season out of any of these wide receivers. We're probably not going to get a 2,000-yard rushing season out of either one of those two running backs, especially if they're going to be splitting and James White's going to be taking some of the passing down stuff. It's just, there really isn't anything that stands out here all that much in terms of the player props for, markets like most outstanding player, most valuable player. This isn't an offense that you would expect those award winners to come from here. So there isn't much that we could really talk about with that. There are a couple things we can talk about, though. Mac Jones, 3,849 yards, 49.5 yards is his prop for passing yards right now. So basically 3,850 is what we need him to get in order to be over. Last year, he threw for 3,800 yards. And remember, we talked about that Buffalo game where he only attempted 3 passes, had 19 yards. I'm not saying he has to have a massive game there, but even if he had a 100-yard game against Buffalo or a 75-yard game against Buffalo, that would have put him over this 3,850 here. So if Mac Jones stays healthy this year, you think they are going to probably open the offense up a little more than they did last year, with this being his second year. You could argue that he has better wide receivers this year with Devontae Parker coming in. So, I mean, there is a chance that Mac Jones can go over on this number. PointsBet has the best of this number to the over and to the under at 3,849.5 yards. You could play an over on that at minus 115. You could play the under at minus 115 over on PointsBet as well. But I like the over of that more. Basically, what you're betting on here is whether or not he stays healthy, right? Because like I said, if they're going to open the offense up a little bit more, and I'm not saying they're going to throw 40 times a game, just open it up a little bit more, where you're averaging 35 passes a game instead of under 30. If you open it up a little bit more next year, I do think that Mac Jones can get over this 3,849.5 yard prop, get to 3,850. So minus 115 over on PointsBet, I think is a good bet here. Again, as long as he stays healthy, I think Mac Jones can go over this number. We talked about some of the other player props here. Again, rushing yards, right? So you have guys like Damian Harris, who led the team last year. I think he had like a little over 200 carries, a little bit under 1,000 yards. He averaged 4.6 yards a carry, which is very good. Ramondre Stevenson also averaged 4.6 yards a carry. And if either one of these guys got hurt in the preseason, then maybe we can revisit some of these numbers, like their rushing totals and, whether or not they'll lead the league in rushing yards. But right now, whether or not they'll lead the league in rushing yards, like Damian Harris is 35-1 to lead the league in rushing yards. I don't think that that's a good enough number. That number would need to be more than double that for me to even have any consideration of it. And even then, I still wouldn't feel comfortable about it. Ramondre Stevenson is at, 12,000 plus 12,500. So 125-1 to be the guy who leads the league in rushing yards. Again, I don't think Ramondre Stevenson is going to lead the league in rushing yards. He would need an injury to Damian Harris. And then maybe if he was the workhorse guy getting 20 plus carries a game, maybe this would make sense for us at plus 125. But again, as long as both of those guys are in there, as long as they're still using James White as well, who will get some carries along with, a lot of the third down work, I just don't see any individual awards coming to this New England Patriots team. Even the receivers, right? You got a guy like Kendrick Bourne, 300-1 to be the guy with the most receiving yards. Really don't see it happening. I mean, he would have to have a massive season, would have to literally double his output from last year. And even then would still probably not be the guy who gets there. Again, not something that I could put any money behind. Devontae Parker, new wide receiver coming in. Everybody's excited about him. Great. 200-1 to have the most receiving yards in the league this year. Again, I don't see the Patriots being that pass heavy where that would be anything that, would really I'd want to put any money on. I feel like you're just kind of pissing money away if you do that. So if you're interested, like I said, 200-1 on Devontae Parker, most receiving yards in the league. 300 to 1 on Kendrick Bourne, most receiving yards in the league. 125 to 1 on Ramondre Stevenson over at Caesars to be the guy with the most rushing yards. And I wouldn't touch Damian Harris at only 35 to 1. That's way too low a number for a guy who isn't going to be the workhorse and get all the carries this year. I think if anything, they're going to use a bunch of guys. And, like I said, none of that's really interesting. One thing that is interesting to me, though, is there are a couple guys that I am looking at for some in-season plays here, meaning like when the games actually start and we're looking on a week-by-week basis. Here are a couple things I do want to throw out there for you. Damian Harris, whether you like him or not, the guy did score 15 touchdowns last year. If you can get him, like minus 120 is probably a standard to score a touchdown for a starting running back that gets the bulk of the carries and the goal line work. If you can get Damian Harris anywhere near even money, which we were able to get a bunch of times last year, and he paid off a bunch of times as well. Again, the guy had 15 touchdowns last season. That's a lot of touchdowns. I think he even missed a game or two as well. So I think he had like 15 touchdowns in 15 or 16 games during the regular season. Those are very impressive numbers. Now, again, we don't know how much of a role Ramondre Stevenson's going to have, whether he's going to, supplant, Damian Harris or anything along those lines. But as long as Harris remains the main guy there and the main goal line guy as well, if you can get him during the season at around even money to score a touchdown, that's going to be something that I'd be willing to put money behind. Again, this was one of the higher scoring offenses in the league last year, even though they didn't get the credit for it. This is a team that did put the ball in the end zone quite a bit. And Damian Harris, 15 touchdowns, led the team last year. Definitely something I would be looking at if you can get him around even money during the regular season. Another thing that we did a lot last year with this New England Patriots team was look at Hunter Henry to score some touchdowns. So Hunter Henry had a run where he had, I forget the exact number, I'll say like 4 or 5 games in a row where he got into the end zone. And the numbers finally started coming down towards the end. But the first couple games, you were able to get Hunter Henry at like plus 275, even into the plus 300 range to score a touchdown. He had 9 touchdowns in 17 games last season, which means he basically scored almost in every other game or so. At a minimum, plus 200 would probably be where the line should be for Hunter Henry based on the usage that he had last year. He had 9 touchdowns of, Mac Jones last year threw 22 touchdowns. Brian Hoyer threw 1. So as a team, the New England Patriots had 23 touchdown passes last year. Maybe they might have even had a receiver one. I don't know. I'd have to go back and check on that. But they had about 23 touchdown passes thrown last year. Hunter Henry caught 9 of those touchdown passes. So that means that Hunter Henry accounted for, 9 divided by 23. It's about 39%. I think it's just under 40%, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's 39% of the touchdowns through the air that the New England Patriots had were from Hunter Henry. Now, again, 17 games, 23 touchdowns. You're talking less than 1.5 passing touchdowns per game. So it's not a massive number. But again, 40% of those did go to Hunter Henry. So if you can get Hunter Henry at like plus 275 or even into the plus 300s to score a touchdown, plus 3, plus 325, plus 350, anywhere in that range right there or higher, this is going to be a guy that I'm going to have some interest in this year because, again, the Patriots have always used their tight end. With a young quarterback, the tight end's kind of the security blanket. And we saw last year that when they get down there close to the red zone, Hunter Henry is a guy that Mac Jones is going to be looking for to get into the end zone and get him some sixes. So I like that Hunter Henry to score a touchdown, plus 250, plus 275, probably the range where I think it start to be playable. Anything in the 300s, definitely something that we're going to put some money on here. But again, I don't have anything else here, guys. I don't really have a lot to talk about with individual awards or individual numbers on this New England Patriots team. It's not going to be a one person spearheaded attack. It's going to be a whole bunch of guys doing their jobs. That's basically the way that the Patriots play. And while that does translate to a lot of wins, which is why I like things like will they make the playoffs and maybe a little outside shot of them to win the AFC East and definitely the over on that 8.5 wins at minus 115. I can't really bet on any of these individual awards because this is not the kind of team where you're going to get a lot of these individual awards. Even if they do wind up having a really good season and finishing with 12 or 13 wins, I still can't see any of the MVP or most outstanding player or the leading rusher or receiver coming from this team. It's just not the way the Patriots play. It's not the way that they're built. But I do think some of the team awards are something that we can look at here. Remember, you can get over to FTN Bets, FTN Fantasy, or FTN Daily right now and sign up for our package. We do have the early bird special pricing going on The price is going to go up as it gets closer to the season, so get in now. And a little trick for all you guys out there. If you use promo code Benny when you check out, you could save 20% off on any package on FTN Daily, FTN Bets, or FTN Fantasy, whatever your poison is. If you're somebody who likes betting, get over to the FTN Bet site. Promo code Benny saves you 20%. If you're going to play a lot of DFS, get over to FTN Daily. Same thing. Promo code Benny, save 20%. If you have some fantasy football drafts coming up, we have a lot of content that has been coming out over on FTN Fantasy to get you guys ready. We got rankings. We got different types of rankings for, best ball and dynasty and standard redraft leagues and all that good stuff over there. So go over and check it out. You get all the rankings, all the stats, all the numbers, all the articles, all the analysis from all of our experts over at the FTN family of websites. So this is Benny Ricciardi signing off for today's edition of the FTN Betscast here at FTN Bets and sponsored by our friends over at Sleeper. Good luck today, everybody.
Live from the new sports betting capital of the world.
You might be from Texas, but I'm from New Jersey.